Hello, and welcome back to the Day Luna Human Design Podcast with your host, Dana and Shayna. This is a projector party episode with a special guest, Lauren LaGrasso, and she's a projector, of course. We know her personally through our mutual friendships, and we know her professionally, and we're really excited to share this episode all about being a projector and Lauren's journey of not embracing being a projector or not resonating with it right away into really understanding how it plays out in real life. So if you are someone who had a difficult time embracing waiting for the invitation, or if you had a difficult time embracing your type as a projector, this is going to be a really powerful episode for you. And we also dive into the energy of creativity. Lauren teaches us so much about what creativity really is in the broadest terms and also in a really simplified version. And we talk about why creativity is so important for living our life purpose, for really embracing our life in general, and what happens when we suppress our creativity.
Yeah, this is definitely a really fun episode, and we get kind of nerdy with human design in it too. So, whether you're a projector or not, this is a great one to dive into your human design journey and see how you can start expanding maybe in ways that you hadn't considered before. So, a bit about Lauren LaGrasso. She has the Unleash Your Inner Creative podcast, which is an award-winning podcast to help you become your full self and live a more creative and authentic life. Lauren was named by Podcast Magazine as one of the 22 unsung heroes of podcasting, and by CEO Weekly as one of the top 10 inspiring women to follow. She's best known for her work as a singer-songwriter, podcast and TV host, executive producer, public speaker, and creative coach. She has helped create hit shows such as Glennon Doyle's We Can Do Hard Things, Brene Brown's Unlocking Us, Pulling the Thread with Elise, Lowen, and many more. Her music has been featured in People Magazine, Yahoo, and heard across iconic venues such as the Viper Room, House of Blues, and Hard Rock Cafe. At the heart of all of Lauren's work is a desire to use her own voice and experience to help other people find their voice and love and trust and know themselves a little bit better. So, as you can see from her amazing bio, she's incredible. We love her, and this conversation is so fun.
Okay, so without further ado, let's welcome on our special guest for the day, Lauren LaGrasso. We are so happy to have this projector party with you. Our worlds have been connected through personal friends, through Spiritsis, and I feel like also in the interwebs, like our communities have been connected. We've been on your podcast before, so we feel so grateful to have you here and to get to have this conversation with you. But I'd love to ask you right off the top, how are you feeling today? I know that you're traveling right now, but how are you feeling on the real?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm honored to be here. Love your work. I just got to take your course and I know we're going to get into it, but just like a whole new level of respect for you two as business women and also teachers. You're such great guides. But I am feeling so excited today. I was really thrilled to talk to you today. I got enough sleep last night. This just in, it works.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm always shocked. When sleep works, I'm like, wow, it's true. Like the rumors are true. It really does make you feel better. I didn't get enough yesterday. I was anxious all day. Today I got enough and I feel great. And when I come back, I'm in Michigan visiting my parents for Christmas. And when I come back, it's kind of like somebody takes a brick out of my head. I think being in LA, as much as I love it and I love how much people dream and are like open to their lives changing there, I feel like I'm constantly ingesting the energy and sometimes the disappointment of other people, and that can really feel heavy. And so coming to Michigan just feels like kind of a fresh start. And there's just less energy around because there's frankly less people. So I feel really good and thrilled to be here with you.
I love it.
Feel the same. And it's so true, especially as a projector, if you don't have sleep, that's the foundation block. And right now in my life, going through this motherhood journey, I'm like, how are there any projector mothers
Parents
out there
that survived?
Yeah, that have survived because
yeah.
it's
sleep
insane.
deprivation is like number one entry into parenthood.
Can I ask you about that? Because I recently have gotten onto like human design Reddit. Have you ever been there?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it can be a scary
It's
place.
kind of dark sometimes. I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. It's dark. I got on a particularly dark chain about parenthood and projectors that like freaked me out. Do you know some of the stuff Ra said about like projectors like not being parents? Have you read that at all?
Well, Raw definitely
Ross
says
says a lot of things.
some
Yeah,
things
he
has.
does.
to kind of initiate, right? To like push us. And sometimes I'm like, is he saying this because he knows that it's going to initiate a solution?
Hmm.
Or is he saying this because he's being shocking and he's getting people, more intrigued into the human design conversation? Or is he saying this because he's just feeling a little spicy and he wants to,
Yeah.
this is what he's saying right now and he doesn't give a fuck? Um, or is it like he's prophesizing and it's true and we're all just like scrambling to think it's not?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it was really sad because the girl who wrote the post was a projector and she was like, I've always wanted to have kids, but now I'm feeling like the post was literally titled Human Design is Ruining My Life. And
So what did it say that he said
she
about parenting?
she like basically quoted something he said about like projectors are not sexual beings and like it's really hard for them to be parents. They're not really meant to be parents. And I actually wrote her back and I was like, listen, I'm like, at the end of the day you have to trust yourself and you should never let a system like give you information about yourself like beyond like what you know inside about you is true regardless of what any system says. And if you start following it blindly, the system has outgrown its usefulness to you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Amen. Aho. Couldn't agree more. And that's always our standpoint, honestly. Like we always say that everything in like Shayna was saying, in general, we think a lot of the things that Ross said, they're not true, but he's saying them in such a mean, like
Yeah,
shocking, like
he can
matter
kind of
of
be a real
fact.
dick.
For sure. And that's his whole charm as a manifester, as a man in the patriarchy in the 90s. Like, and then we often feel like it's so funny because, Ross passed away, but Shayna and I feel this like very close connection to him on the other side. I know that sounds weird, but we can feel when he's like speaking through us. We can feel what he would say versus we're meant to say. And we also feel this like, full circle, like human design is bigger than just Ra, and he always knew that, and it was always the plan that this was like coming in at a certain time in humanity to change the entirety of humanity, but one individual at a time. And we feel like there's so many projector women now that Ra has passed away that are taking what he said and they're like, okay, ladies, so actually what he meant was this, and here how do we interpret it is this,
Yeah.
and the healthiest way and the most positive way that we can enhance our lives is this. And it's almost like his role, like being that shocking and saying things that are really definitive. It was like just to grab your attention. And now all of us in the new paradigm, as the patriarchy is crumbling and divine feminine energy is rising, it's like we're changing the languaging. And a lot of hardcore traditional human design guides and readers and analysts are really against changing the original languaging. And for us, our perspective is that it's necessary. It is crucial to change the languaging in order for this system to evolve in a way that is supportive for the evolving humans. So like, but what you said as a projector, I'm like, preach, sister. Like that is such wisdom. And we totally see it in the same way.
And just to add on to that, I just want to note that there are definitely some keynotes in the languaging of human design that was channeled that is here to initiate and spark and unlock things within your energetic body. And we definitely explore that and lean into that and value that. However, what Dane is talking about, like the languaging must be changed, is really that human design is trying to give language to something that is energetic and something that is felt, that doesn't there wasn't a language for this before, right? So a lot of times when you're channeling human design, which a lot of human design readers do, anytime they're sitting across from a person and seeing what they're currently navigating, what their current blockages are energetically, what their current desires are that they're moving towards, or their purpose, how it's actually manifesting in their life right now at this moment, they're giving languaging to these energetics. That way somebody can understand what is going on, get their mind on board, so that way they can let go and let their body and energy do the work. So human design's whole purpose is to give languaging to something felt, so that way our mind can then understand it and then be like, okay, cool, I get it now. I can let go of the reins and I can let my geometry naturally magnetize and attract me where I'm meant to go. Now, some phrases and words in human design are keynotes that are meant to help unlock your mind and help unlock your energy to let that geometry work a little bit more efficiently. But I just wanted to kind of add on to that and clarify for any human design nerds or fanatics or analysts or whatever you want to call yourself out there that are like, wait, hold on, there are keynotes. Yes, we totally agree. And the
And
last
it's a
thing I want to
balance.
say,
It's a balance, like bringing it into the future. It's a balance of like holding the integrity, obviously holding the integrity of it, but like also using the specifics without changing them so that it stays unified instead of being like all over the place. So I think it's like
yeah,
a dance that is an individual journey. Like it's not up to one person to create that balance.
and stays relevant towards, where we have moved since this information has been channeled. And now that the new paradigm is we're getting real close here. A lot has changed since Ra has channeled the system and was initially teaching this. And also in the same vein to this, Reddit person or anyone listening who's been on the darker side of the human design Reddit chain. A lot of times when Ra is giving blanket statements, it's towards the masses who don't know about their human design, who are living from a place of their mind controlling their life and who aren't using their strategy and authority and who have a lot of not self running their life. And so, it's completely different conversation to talk about a projector who is using their strategy and authority, and their authority has led them towards this is what's right for me and I am meant to have a child. And it's 100% correct with their geometry and their energy. It's going to be a completely different experience as a projector parent than if you are coming from a place of your mind and you're not self. And this is just what I have to do. I'm coming to a certain age and I need to have a child or else where's my value and all, whatever. There's a million different conditioning stories that we have around having kids. That's going to be coming from a place of misalignment and or incorrectness, as Ra would say. And so yeah, I think I definitely do resonate with not being like a sexual being as a projector, because I don't have that sacral, but I don't have a lot of defined centers in general. So there's a lot of places where sexual energy can come from. So that it's so interesting seeing people who dive into human design and just take it word for word for word. And then it feels like this system that is boxing you in or limiting you in some way, but they're not seeing the energetics behind it, like what is trying to be conveyed through these different things that Ra is saying or someone is teaching, the energetics behind it. It's all about liberation. It's all about self empowerment and being able to trust yourself and knowing how to do that. So I love that you brought this up because I think it's something that a lot of people get tripped up on in many different places with human design, and getting to reframe it as, okay, where have I seen this as truth in my life and how am I empowered around this? It's always going to come back to strategy and authority with human design, but it's that your energy. We're talking about energy. And once you get your head around that, then it becomes a little bit easier to see how it's supporting you versus like trying to be an authority over you. Like literally defeats the whole purpose.
Plus, you got to get into the deeper layers. Like I'm a projector, but two of my most important gates in my cross of incarnation are tantric gates that come off of my undefined sacral. My husband, who I sleep next to every night, has a defined sacral. So I'm taking in his sexual energy and it's unlocking my own, which are some of the biggest parts of my personality. So it's like you got to get into those deeper layers. But I just have to highlight, Lauren, how much we love you. The fact that we just dive into this conversation, we're like so lit up and so into it. It automatically, like, you just get it. You're on our level. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, and let's back up a little bit.
Back it right up, baby.
Beep, beep. And we'd love to start by just letting you introduce yourself to our audience. Like if you could share with us a bit about who you are, what it is that you do and share and teach. I know that that's a huge topic, but I'd love to just let you have the floor and introduce to our audience who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So my name is Lauren. I grew up in Michigan, like Midwesterner at heart, 100% Italian. So very much like raised in Italian American culture. Moved to LA when I was 22 and I've lived there for 13 years now. And since I've been there, have had a total journey. I now consider myself a multi-passionate creative. So I am a singer-songwriter, podcast host and producer, I just started doing public speaking, which is really, really exciting and kind of feels like the culmination of everything I've ever done, and a creative coach and teacher. My biggest thesis statement and like what I feel like I was born to share is that creativity is your birthright. And I want to lead people back toward claiming that for themselves, unleashing it in their lives, and really stepping into the fullness of who they are. I really think that many or most of our world's problems wouldn't be what they are, at least not as bad as what they are, if every single person was on their own creative journey. And so, yeah, that's what I feel like I was born to do, to like share that with people and empower people to use their voice and share their creativity with the world.
Wow, so beautiful. And of course, we're always like looking at someone's chart when you're talking and looking at all of the different places where your chart really reflects what you are. And we'll get into that because you know a lot about your chart now because you did our Kiss Goodbye Your 9 to 5 journey, which we'll get into. But like one of the big things that stands out in your chart is that you have the channel of struggle. And it's like so important for you to be connected to your mission. And when you meet someone who really knows that mission in an embodied sense, it just like hits differently. That person is such a beacon and such a shining light, which I really feel that you are. It's so cool to witness that and to see that that's like the mission that's driving you behind all of the different things you're sharing. And I'm also so happy that you're stepping into like guiding people and leading more courses and things like that. I mean, you're an incredible communicator. I'm such a fan of your podcast. I love how you interview people. I love watching your projector recognition, just see people to the core, and the questions you ask are so insightful. So like I love that you're doing it all and that you're leaving space for it all and really like going on a journey of, okay, how do I want to guide people and refine people and what I'm, letting that mission be the baseline. But I am curious to ask you as a projector, I know that it was kind of a shock to you to discover your projector, or tell us about that. Like, tell us about the conditioning that you had versus like discovering your projector. What was that like for you?
Well, so I'll tell you the story of how I found out I was a projector. It was our dear mutual friend, Steffi Hill, aka Spirit Sis. I walked into her apartment one night and she had just discovered human design. And she was all excited. She was telling me about it. And she's like, oh, I'm a manifesting generator. Here's all these things about it. And, because I do a lot of different things, I was like, oh, I'm probably that one. And so then she ran my chart and she read it to me and she read what a projector was. And I think it was like around the time when she's like, they're not meant to work many hours a day. I looked at her and said, this is bullshit. And I think it's like one of like, we weren't in a fight, but like, it's like probably the harshest I've ever been with her. Cause I was just like, what the fuck? You're telling me, so I have to wait for an invitation and I have to like just like lay around all day. Like I had been so bought into hustle culture. Like a few years ago, when I started my career, I was working sometimes 12 to 18-hour days, depending on the day. And so I really bought into the belief that like I could work my way into or out of anything. And I was really conditioned in that way. And I just think I thought of it at that point as like unempowering. I have to sit on my hands all day and just like hope that somebody does something for me. And I didn't know any of the intricacies of it. I wasn't looking at it from the point of view of like, oh, like so I just have to sit here and someone hands me something if I'm like living in my purpose and in my energy type. I was more looking at it like from the unempowering point of view. And I always find it hilarious because I listen to your podcast a lot, also a huge fan. And people come on your podcast and it's like projectors and like, it was so freeing the minute I found out I was a projector. I'm like, do not relate.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're sharing this right now, because there's going to be a huge amount of our audience that really resonates with what you're saying and had the same experience. And I think that we always find that human design and life in general has this duality in this, like you're either on one end of the pole or the other. Like a lot of people, when they discover that they're manifestors are here to be like rebellious and they say what they want and they do what they want and they're not afraid to rock the boat. And there are so many manifestors that do not resonate with that because their entire life they've been punished when they rock the boat. They've been punished when they speak up. They've broken relationships and friendships and even maybe familial relationships because of speaking up. And so they had to learn over time to not lean into that. And as a projector, kind of switching gears here, but like what we want more than anything is success, because that's what our soul came here to experience, our self theme. And it's like the way that you've seen the world and been taught to get success is exactly what you were mentioning before. Like, and those are such admirable qualities in you that you were like, I'm doing this shit. I'm taking control of my life. I'm showing up. I'm getting my foot in the door. Like, those are all admirable things until you realize that it's a mismatch for the meat suit that you were given and the energy that animates it. You know what I mean? And that you will literally crash your car off the road one day unexpectedly when you're 40 years old or whatever it is, if you don't make a shift there. So I'm really grateful for you sharing that. And I think that there's probably so many people that feel really inspired by hearing that.
Well, I'm glad. And it's like it's been a long journey. I think I still struggle with it a little bit because I am not completely unbrainwashed yet. Like there's still a really big part of me that's like terrified to completely let my foot off the gas. Like, and even like saying it that way, right? Like it's clear that there's like conditioning there. But I have still a hard time like believing that if I only worked like 3 or 4 hours a day, I could be okay. But I do know that's like what my soul yearns for because like I want to have kids and I want to have the energy for that. And I actually almost was like curious to hear from the two of you. Like I know no 2 days are alike, but what does a projector workday look like? Because I kind of can't visualize it and I don't fully still understand like what it could look like.
Yeah. Oh, I just love everything you're saying because I resonate. And um letting your foot off the gas, there's a few different things here. You have a defined route. So you kind of know when it's the time to get shit done and when it's the time to rest. However, your mind can hop in and have anxiety and feel like, okay, but I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And what about this? And what about that? And so it's sensing in your body, like, do you feel like you are burning the candle at both ends? Do you feel exhausted in your body? Do you feel tired? Do you feel unfascinated by the things that you're working on? And you're just going through the motions. Those are always going to be signposts like, okay, it's time for more rest and it's time to connect back in with what you're really fascinated in. Now, if you are exhausted, you can't even ask the question, what's fascinating to me? And the reason why that question is so important is because as a projector, we want success and we want to not have to work our asses off our whole life to get there. And it's like, well, how is that possible? And first, you have to recognize yourself through what you're fascinated in. And the reason why I say that is because when you think of projectors, and especially like anyone listening who's very traditional human design vibes, projectors' auras are focused and penetrating, meaning the main way that our energy works is focusing on everything around us, what we could be doing more of, what other people are doing wrong, how things could be better, what needs to be done today or fixed today, or how our world works. Like we are always just like a needle poking around our life and focusing in on something. So if you're focused, the main way that your energy is working is always spent on things outside of yourself. Nobody's going to be able to recognize you for who you really are because you don't recognize you for who you really are. So starting to turn that in on yourself and then ask that, like, what am I fascinated in? To be able to do that, you have to be rested. So it's like the perfect projector day. Yes, it does change day by day, but it's asking, okay, am I rested today? Like, if no, then okay, I'm going to maybe decrease my time that I'm working to 2 hours instead of 4. And then if I am rested, what am I fascinated in with my work right now? Like, what's the most like interesting thing to me today? Now, of course, you might have meetings, you might have things already planned, you might have like a goal that you're working on, and that could be really aligned for you based on your chart. But then a lot of times your fascination might be checking everything off my list today that I already had planned, or it might be recording these podcasts or meeting with these people. Fascination doesn't always have to be like, ooh, I'm learning something new. It can be, ooh, this feels like interesting. Like I feel engaged. I feel my focus, feeling that little ping of like juiciness. And so then it would be like, ideally, let's say you work 2 to 4 hours. That could be in the morning, that could be at night, midday, whatever feels good to you. And it could be broken up. Like, okay, I'm going to do an hour call, and then I'm going to have 2 hours where I'm doing something that doesn't feel like work. And then I'm going to do another hour thing that feels like work. So it's going to be different for each person based off what feels good for you, but the way that you need to kind of go about it is asking, am I rested? And then asking what feels like work versus what feels fascinating and I could do it all day long. And then the stuff that feels like work, setting that timer for those things based off of how rested you feel that day. So for Dana and I, it looks like sometimes where we have 1 week a month that we do readings, and then we don't do readings the whole rest of the month. And on the rest of the month, it's like, okay, our intention is to record some podcasts this week. And then we check in like at 11 a.m. Hey, do you feel good to record this podcast? Yes, no. And then we cancel if it doesn't feel right. Also, we have a lot of like freedom of like, okay, this is our time to dream or to build or to do something that feels fascinating, right? And within that little time frame, it might be something that feels draining, like putting together a Google document that takes a lot of time and is exhausting, or it might be something that's like hopping on a phone call and dreaming up our next big retreat. And that doesn't feel like work at all. It just feels like having a conversation with your best friend. So it's getting really clear on like what feels like work, what doesn't. I know that was a really long-winded way of saying that.
No,
I mean,
it
Dana,
wasn't.
is there anything else?
Oh no,
Yeah.
go ahead, Lauren. I'm
No, I
curious to
did.
hear
So
feedback.
do you actually still set a timer, or do you just like eyeball it?
We eyeball it at
Eyeball
this
it.
point.
Okay.
But I will say that, you know, what you mentioned about like, it's hard for me to like believe it or like actually like buy in fully that that can happen. I just want to say that I resonate with that. And like in the beginning, when we've been in business for 5 years now, and now I will say, especially like with the preparation we did with Shayna being on maternity leave, like we are, to be honest, like nailing it with the projector rest, and we're doing great. But it took us a long time to get here. It wasn't like this in the beginning. We had that in our minds, and that was our goal. But we definitely like hustled our asses off for certain things and for certain deadlines, and we're like, that's not the goal, but right now it's where I am. And finally,
Right.
5 years later, we have it like this well-oiled machine with these really powerful systems with really good delegation, but it didn't happen overnight. It's
Yeah.
been like our number one priority to refine, to refine, to refine. And it's taken this long, I want to say. And we're still not perfect. Some projects come up that were like, shit, I had to work on this for 5 days all day long, and I'm literally sick now afterwards. But it's like in our mind's eye that that's always like the target that we're trying to shape. And now that we've kind of, I sort of do feel like we like landed in this like perfect projector flow, but even still sometimes I'm like, is this going to get taken away from me? Am I just
Yeah.
one step away from it all falling out and I have to go back to a 9 to 5 job? Like there still is sometimes that fear or that doubt because it's just so different than what other people are doing. Like our family members think we're crazy, and they also don't get what we do, by the way. Like even
Right.
though if they're proud of us, they're like, I honestly don't actually get what you really do. Like, do you work at all? And they really don't see the things that we create, the things that we've built, etc.
Yeah. How, like, while you were getting to the point where you're now in perfect flow, how did you deal with any shame that came up? Or like maybe you didn't, but like that's something I noticed, like if I'm taking time off, like even, something you did that you posted about freed me so much when you posted that you work from bed. Because I always felt like guilty about that. I've always loved working from bed ever since I was little. I call it my home office. But like that really freed me, but I still struggle. Like there's been a thing in me since I was really young where like when I would take a break, I'd be like, you should be doing more right now. And I struggle with that even on days when I am like technically in the projector timeline. So how did you get past that part of the conditioning?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really reframing that um, I am always seeing 110% more than the majority of people in my life at any given moment. And so even when I'm, lounging by a pool, for example, I'm fucking noticing how Ojai Valley runs its staff and how, everything is functioning and what's dysfunctional there and how if people are happy working this job and how maybe it could be better and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm always noticing all of these things that I'm like, okay, I'm honing my wisdom and my awareness all the time, that physically my human body can just chill the fuck out and let my mind do what it's going to do. And that is work. If I need to reframe it that way, to let myself cut myself some slack. You're doing that when you're watching a movie as a projector. You're doing that when you're listening to a podcast.
You're always
analyzing.
learning.
Like you're
Yeah.
always learning and analyzing and honing your wisdom and your sight, your insight, as a projector. So knowing that,
and you're like taking
most
a
of the world
break.
doesn't operate that way.
You're like watching trashy reality TV show, but you get all these downloads about this course that you're creating on whatever, and you're like, I really want to share. Like projectors are always doing that. So definitely by seeing that, you can let go of that guilt.
Yeah. And knowing though that like to the outside world, they're like, what are you doing? And
yeah, they're like, you're laying down. Like, I'm building an empire right now. I have to tell my husband that all the time because I'm just on my phone. He sees me just on my phone, but I'm like, I'm not on Instagram. I am building out like a plan for a course on my notes app. Like, it might look like I'm just laying on the couch on my phone, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I do want to say though that it does take experimenting to kind of prove it to yourself that you can work less and make more money. And it comes in seasons, right? Like there's definitely been times where I feel a lack of money. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to do all these things. And I want to revert back into my old conditioning of hustle, grind, make it happen. And nobody's going to do it for you. If you don't do it yourself, you got to fucking pick yourself up and blah, blah, blah. And I'll do that for a week. And then that was all I needed to do, actually. And then when I really look at it, I worked a week out of a month really hard. And then I took 3 weeks to chill. So it can look different where, you're a week on and then you're 2 weeks off, or you're 3 days really, 10 hours a day. And then the rest of the week you don't work at all. It doesn't have to be 2 to 4 hours each and every single day. So yeah, you can play around with that. But in my point of like proving it to yourself, I was so scared about taking this maternity leave and like, what's that going to look like for our business and all the things. We hired an amazing assistant, and delegation is huge as a projector, and it does require investing into that thing. And at the time we're like, oh my gosh, okay, how are we going to pay this person's salary and continue with what we've been doing? And I'm not going to be working.
Like, we're going to be making less money, but we have to pay more money. So it's like always a backwards, you're putting the cart before the horse kind of thing as a projector. Like, you're always, what you really want is more freedom and more money, then you have to spend more money, even in a scary time. So it takes so much bravery and like going out on a limb.
Yeah. And I have proven it to myself. Like, I think we're the most abundant than we have been right now. And I haven't worked since July. And that's crazy to me that I'm like, I feel really abundant right now and I'm not doing shit. Like, I know I preach this, but like really seeing it happen in my life in such a big way, is just so nice, right? It's like, okay, I can let go. And then there's that little tightness in your body that creeps in with conditioning. Like, well, shit, what's going to be in a month or 2 months? Or am I doing enough? Should I be doing more now? Am I going to regret it? All the things. But it's that trust fall into your own energy. And only you are going to sense, am I burning the candle at both ends energetically? Or am I lit the fuck up with this thing right now? And I'm really feeling good energy wise. It's day by day. Do I feel rested? Do I not? Trusting yourself with that.
Yeah. Well, that was really, really deep. I mean, the thing that you said about I'm working even when I'm laying down at the Ojai Valley Inn, I was like, that actually is probably one of the things that's resonated most with me around the whole work thing, because it's true. My brain is never off. Like, I'm always thinking like, oh my God, this person could do that. And then they could do that. And this system could be like tied up in this way. And I've always just thought like, oh, that's just who I am. That's just how I operate. But I never thought like, it's really a lot easier for me to like push my energy out than it is to like bring it back home and into myself. So you gave me some great food to think on, or food for thought.
Food for thought. Yeah. Food to think on.
Chew on.
I'm chewing on that food, baby. No, but that was really, really helpful to me, because next time I go to feel bad about myself for like taking a 10-minute break,
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
going to I'm going to remember that and say like you've been working and you've been working your whole life.
Totally.
Yes.
And like your main sun gate in your chart, Lauren, is like this observant quality where you are literally always seeing. And then right behind that is gate 7, where then you're guiding and directing people and showing people the way. Like, and then on the other side, you have gate 1 and gate 2, which is literally all about creativity, coming up with new ideas, and then being able to actualize them and bring them into form. So it's so cool to see how you are like such a walking embodiment of all of your gifts. And you're like I was saying before, like, you know, your purpose. You're so clear about what you're talented about in or passionate about, how you want to guide people, how you want to lead people. That's like the home base part. But then it's like, okay, how do I actually provide for myself doing this, living as a projector? That's the art form. And we always say like there's part of human design that's like this science, and you're looking at the certain qualities that you have that are just in your genetic, you know, DNA. And then there's this other part. How do I actualize that on the human plane? Like, how do I materialize that day to day, moment to moment? How do I build a life that actually allows me to be who my soul intended me to be? It's not enough to just have the clarity of who you are. Then it's like, how do I actually make this happen? But I'm curious to ask you, like, do you feel like you always knew what you wanted to do and what you were good at? Or do you feel like even that part was like a journey for you? Because sometimes as a projector, you know, such a blind spot when it comes to what you're passionate about or what you're good at.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like it was a journey. The interesting thing as you're talking, and I don't think I've shared this with you, but like in your course, the more intricate parts of human design, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's weird. I think I've been living the more complicated parts, but having a harder time with like the foundational aspects, which are
Right.
your strategy and authority. But
Right.
like the gates, the channels, I was like, yes, yes, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And even the gate of struggle, I
Mm-hmm.
actually love that one, and I find it super empowering because it is something that I do. Like I call myself an angsty optimist. I believe the best possible thing will happen, but I like to acknowledge the struggles and the pain along the way. But I always believe it's going to work out, and I find meaning in all the pain. And so from a young age, I wanted to perform. I wanted to connect with people through creativity, through singing, through acting. I even in high school was like, I'm going to be a public speaker someday, but I wanted to make sure like I lived some life before I had something to publicly speak on. And so my journey from Michigan State, getting a BFA in acting, BA in communication, moving out to LA, pursuing acting, acting started breaking my heart. And then I found music, and music really like healed me and took me on this journey. And through music, I was able to find podcasting because I started listening to radio. It made me feel less alone. And I really found the power of the dreams you find on the way to your dreams. And it was like through that and like through the times when I had pushed creativity down that I really realized like repressed creativity causes much of the world's suffering. It's been true in my life. I've seen it out in the masses. And I think only in the past 5 years, like I don't even think I fully understood that like me empowering creativity and empowering people to find their voices was my thing until like a year or two into my podcast. So I feel like I've just tried a lot. I've walked through a lot of open doors, and only now am I starting to see how like everything connects and was kind of all leading to this.
Wow, that's so interesting. Like, yeah, with those foundational aspects you're talking about, your strategy and authority, those are the ones that are like the art form. And they are foundational in that you're meant to practice them every day, but they are not foundational in like it's easy
Right.
at all. But it's so cool to hear that, you know, everything you're saying, I feel like you're so in alignment with the 3 in your profile, the trial and error. It's like, let me just try this. And through that, I discover this thing and I discover that next step. And like, it's really cool to see how you've been able to refine it by just going the journey. And I feel like in general, so much of your cross, the cross of the Sphinx, is about helping people find their path. And it's like not about the destination. It's about which path are you going on and how do you feel, like the dreams that you come upon before the dream, what you were saying, I feel like is such a part of your wisdom and your medicine that you're here to guide people with.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I've
Mhm.
never fully understood the incarnation cross. I mean, part of me was like, is it because it said something about like looking at the past and then making sense of the future through the past. So I'm like, I am the one in my family that is always like,
Storytelling.
this family trauma happened and it's still affecting us 3 generations later. Why is no one talking about it?
Right. And
So I
like,
feel it in that for sure.
and like when you're interviewing someone, being like, what were those traumas or those events that happened in your past that stopped you? That's the medicine that's going to unlock us about how you move forward on your journey. And like, if we don't understand those roadblocks or those discoveries or those, the things that sort of informed us, then we're not going to have clarity about our path that we're moving forward on. And I feel like you're so good at getting to the core of that. Like it seems like effortless for you. You just naturally know how to ask people those questions and bring up that understanding and that wisdom and like those observations. And then it gives them like so much fuel about moving forward.
Yeah.
That
I
makes me
do want to
happy.
add that, when we talk about looking at the past, it's coming from this gate 13, which is observation and being able to listen and observe and hear the things that people maybe aren't saying, or seeing the patterns. Everybody that I've seen with this problem, like this is really the core of it. So when we're talking about like, taking the past and then bringing it towards the future, the past is like, I observed, right? And so it's like, sometimes when we think the past, we're like, okay, 4 years ago or 100 years ago, or like really looking at the past, like, and it can be that, but it's also like, I observed when I was at Ojai Valley Inn how they could make this better and how their employees maybe were happy or this was thriving, or how every place needs to have a system like this because it really worked. And I felt so nurtured. Right? That's the past tense. So it's really like, gate 13 is seeing, observing what's happening. And then gate 1 is this present energy. And this is your other sun gate, which is like this present creation. How can we take our observations and use it in this present moment to create? And then gate 7 is looking towards the future and seeing, where are we headed? What direction are we going in? And what do we need to do in the present? And what have we learned from the past that's going to get us to where we really want to be going? So it's this very like observational energy from past, present, future. And the Sphinx is it's like your direction. It's coming from this G center, all of the gates here. And gate 2 is like this power in the now to know what's needed to move forward, and the action and the resources that can be taken or given to make things move forward. So I just wanted to plant the seed, because like we were saying in the beginning, the languaging can be like, okay, looking at the past, like, do I have to be like this mystic that's like looking
Or
into
do I have
the
to
past,
be
or
a
like
historian?
That's what I thought.
exactly.
I was like, I don't know if history and me are really meant to be, but we'll try.
and it's so much more about knowing like, okay, I observed, and this is wisdom. So like I was saying, you are working all the time just by what you're seeing, and it's adding to your arsenal of wisdom and insight that you might, use at a future date. Like I have the same cross as you actually, but just different order of my numbers. So I'm a Sphinx as well. And I don't know if I'm going to open a retreat center one day, but I might. And all of the things that I'm observing at Ojai Valley Inn, I don't know why this example is there, and like shout out to them,
stuck.
I guess.
Seriously. I need to reach out. You've got some good ideas.
I know, it's so funny. But like it's all insight that I'm going to use, that I use in my retreats, that I use in my events, that I even use in the courses that I build online on Kajabi. Like all of the different things that I'm observing are now being fed into what I'm creating in the now, that then is helping everyone move towards a better future direction, whether that's my intention, like blatantly or not.
I love that.
I was curious to ask you, Lauren, like something that you're saying that I really resonate with, because, we're talking about this cross. It's like guiding people into the future by understanding the past, and also guiding people to create unique things in the world, and to actually build it, and to actually do it, and to not just let it be a dream, but to make it a reality. You're here to guide all of that. And I love what you said about you really seen and observed through all your observations that if we repress our creativity, it's really bad for us and it causes a lot of our issues. And I really agree with that. And when we say creativity, we find that a lot of people have a blockage just in the word in and of itself. They're like, well, I'm not a painter, so I'm not creative. I'm
Yeah.
not a dancer, I'm not a singer, so I'm not creative. And I'm curious to ask you, could you share with us some of your insights about what creativity really is? And why do you think if we repress our creativity, we lose out so much on the life we're meant to live?
Yeah, I'm so happy you asked this. As you were saying those I'm not creative sayings that people say, it literally brings tears to my eyes because I think so many people have just handed over their birthright to creativity and given away their power in this way. And it really is an innate part of all human beings. So there's a couple things I want to share. Number one, like we are literally made of stardust. Like the Big Bang is probably the biggest creative act that ever happened, and we
Yeah.
are all made of those particles. So our whole body, like our whole being, our energy is pure creative essence. So I don't know how anyone could doubt it for a minute, but to take it out of that and into science, NASA did this longitudinal study, and they studied a group of 5-year-olds. There were, I think it was 1,600 5-year-olds over the course of 31, up till they were 31 years of age. When the kids were 5, 98% of them scored at creative genius level. So not just creative genius level. And they kept checking in with them every 5 years. The numbers were dropping drastically every 5 years. By the time those same 5-year-olds had turned to be 31, the numbers had swapped. So it went from 98% being creative genius to only 2. And it's because there's many reasons that happen. Like I believe there's a lot of creative heartbreak. Kids are taught, they try something and they're taught there's a consequence to being wrong. They're humiliated, they're shamed. That's why a lot of my work deals with inner child healing and going back to the place of creative pain and creating a new memory, taking care of that younger version of yourself. But also our schooling literally knocks it out of us. Kind of like what we're talking about with the conditioning. We're taught that we have to engage in convergent thinking, which is logical, A plus B equals C, and that there's no value in divergent thinking, which is sitting there and daydreaming, dreaming up what the future could be, thinking of your next course. Like that is, we're taught as kids that that is not the way that you get accolades, that you get success in life, that you get social acceptance. And so we really shut that part of ourselves down. And so, what I hope people listening, if somebody out there is listening right now and thinking, well, I'm not really creative, I hope that shows you that you literally are made of pure creative essence and that the science shows that, yes, you were most likely born a creative genius. And if not a creative genius, at least some level of creative. And why you need to reclaim it is because if you haven't been owning this part of yourself, you are literally disowning a huge part of who you are and what it means to be a human being.
Wow, wow, wow. That is so powerful. And to hear you say that you're born a creative genius, it just like sparks this
Mm.
hope and this positivity inside of me that feels so true. Like it feels sacred. And even what you're saying about the Big Bang being the original creation and that you are a repercussion of that and a part of that, it shows us that, like, if we're trying to define the word creativity, it's like our one true essence, our one sacred uniting force. It's creativity is life. Creativity is the fact that you exist, you are a part of, you are a being of, you are an extension of. And it's really cool. It brings us into this like sacred birthright, like you're saying, to think about those words. It really brings it home and it makes you feel like you're inherently worthy to do that. And also it shows you that if you're repressing that and suppressing your creativity, that you're suppressing life inside of you. You're suppressing your vitality. You're suppressing your existence.
Your
And
connection to the divine, like your
right,
connection with every other human being, our
right.
oneness in the world. When we shut that piece of us down, we're literally saying no to this part that connects everything and everyone.
Yeah. I have full chills as you're sharing because it's just so important. Like when you share it in that way, it's like, oh my God, yeah.
Like it is the most
And
important thing on planet
yeah,
Earth.
yeah. And I wanted to ask just about, the word creativity. I know like we're talking about it's our essence, like we are divinely creative. We're creating right now with just thoughts or words or having a conversation, creating. But when it comes to like somebody unleashing their creativity, does that look like now they're getting into arts and crafts or music, or like, yes, it could be that, but it also could be creating a business or something like that. Like what do you find people's outcome is, I guess, in going on this journey to release that suppressed side of themselves?
Yeah. So I guess I didn't answer Dana's question, which was what was my definition? But my definition of creativity is seeing something in your mind's eye and then making it exist out in the world. So just imagining something and then putting it out in the world. There's this great quote by Dr. Wayne Dyer that says, everything that exists was once imagined. And so that's kind of my overarching definition of creativity. It's our essence as a human being, but it's also taking our imagination and then putting it out into the world. So it could be literally anything. It could be inventing a new recipe and then making it for your family that night. It could be parenting in a different way than you ever saw expressed for you. And like, which I know, Shayna, you're doing, like you're creating this new way of parenting. Like that is unbelievable creativity. Having a baby is very creative. You're literally bringing a new life into the world. It could be like if you loved painting when you're a little kid, painting again, starting a new business. It's anything that you take from inside and then put out into the world in some way.
Gosh, I think that's so helpful because I definitely, looking at people in my life who I know have said like, I'm not creative, or I was creative as a child. Like we've said, they're thinking about like arts and crafts or whatever, but it's coming from the root place is coming from like, I should be creative. So I'm going to buy a paint by numbers, or I'm going to, go take this dance class or whatever the thing is. And it's coming from a place of should, or like mentally trying to make sense of creativity, I put in quotes, like making sense of it versus like a genuine thing, imagination in your mind, like a genuine thing that can't be assigned to you or given as homework, but is really coming from within you and then putting it out into the world. Like that imagination piece, I think, is huge because we all lost touch. I mean, a lot of us have lost touch of our imagination and dreaming up something. It's so interesting because you're a possibilities person, meaning your perspective, the lens through which you are meant to see the world is possibilities, which is the same as mine as well. And you're meant to be seeing all of the different possibilities, what could happen, dreaming up like, okay, yes, this could happen, but also we could win the lottery and then none of that even matters anyways, right? You're meant to see all these possibilities. And that is such a big part of your gift to the world, is helping people connect back into the power of our imagination and the limitlessness that is within that. I'm just like so moved by everything you're saying, probably because I'm possibilities too. And I'm just like, yes,
the possibilities are endless, but we're only going to Ojai Valley in after this.
No, yes, that's it. I'm driving there. I'm going to come all the way from Michigan. I got to see what they're doing right and wrong.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say that, creativity, being able to define it is big because it is a word that is so big. Like what you're talking about with your definition of creativity, talking about like source energy and all of that, like that's as big as talking about what is God. That's as big as talking about what does it mean to fall in love. That's as big as talking about what is life. So you can see why people get tripped up on it. You can see why they've internalized shame or whatever it is along the way and shut off something around their creativity because it is so big. It is so central to what we are. Like it makes sense that we need support in this area. It makes sense that we need guides to help us define it, to help us understand it. And you have Gate 64, which is like taking something that's so big and so confusing and really being able to not make it confusing, to make it simple, to understand it, and to say creativity is just having something in your mind's eye, a vision, and then actualizing on the material plane. I feel like so that simplicity can unlock so much for people listening.
I'm so glad. And I would also encourage people, like, don't even let my definition be your definition. Like, you figure out what creativity means to you and then go express it. It's just like what I want to empower people to know is that creativity isn't something that has to be conjured up or manufactured. It's just something we have to remember. If we feel like it's gone, all we have to do is tune back into ourselves, maybe do some healing with a younger version of ourselves that got hurt or wounded, because it is also the most sensitive, sweet, open-hearted part of who we are. And then let it unleash however you see fit.
Yeah. And I'd love to lean into that a little bit with, I love that you do inner child work in the way that you guide people, because I do think that's so important. And I cannot tell you the number of people we've met in readings where they've told us the moment that a choir teacher in third grade told them they can't sing, or a fifth grade teacher told them they're not a good public speaker, or someone told them that they'll probably never be an entrepreneur, but they're much more of a follower than a leader. We've met people, they know the moment it was told to them first, and that it's still a blockage in their journey, in their life. So I love that you focus on healing that and doing the work with that. That's so beautiful. But something that I wanted to ask you about is just the idea of believing in yourself in general. I think that that's another word for self-love, is like actually believing in yourself, believing that you have something that's worth doing, that's worth sharing, that's worth being, that's worth creating. But I'm curious to ask you, what advice do you give to someone that's struggling to believe in themselves?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I love you and I believe in you. And it's hard, but I think whenever I've been struggling with self-doubt and like wondering why these things are put on my heart, um, I really don't think that like I believe in God, not like a big white man in the sky, but like, one love, like light, everything. And I don't believe God would put these things in my heart if it wasn't for some purpose and if it wasn't leading me toward some sort of learning or like higher good. And so when I really do start to question it, I'm like, okay, these things were put on my heart for a reason. And I'm just going to follow that. I'm going to borrow belief from people around me who believe in me, because like there can be people, like I had a radio coach when I first started podcasting who was like, Lauren, you've got it. You can do this. I believe in you. And I was struggling with believing in myself at that point, but her belief in me and with like her trajectory and her track record, I was like, okay, if Valerie believes in me, then there must be something here. And going back to a younger version of yourself, again, like not to make everything about the inner child, but a lot of it is going
Yeah,
back to that younger
totally.
version of yourself who just did it for the joy. It's like I think a lot of times when I've been struggling with belief, it's because I'm trying to like figure out the outcome or like make myself feel better about like the fear I'm feeling about pursuing this thing or trying something. And going back to that younger self who just wanted to sing a song, like all they wanted to do is express themselves. All they wanted to do was be connected with other people. All they wanted to do was paint something or share a thought. And they didn't know not to believe in themselves. And maybe you can also like borrow the love you feel for that younger version of yourself for yourself now. And also that hope and joy and optimism that younger version had and bring it into the current present day.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And I think another question that I come up, like I always am hearing the skeptic's voice, like, but people listening are like, yeah, but what about this? Like, yeah, but what about that? And obviously, one of the big things you probably hear is, what about money? What
Yeah.
about this capitalistic society that we live in? How do I make space to embrace my creativity if I'm struggling to provide for myself financially? And, I can say that I'm really guilty of this with my creativity, that I'm like, this is not important because I don't think I'm going to make money from this. And I've had to really, or like, for example, that I'm a singer and a songwriter as well. And when I decided that I wasn't going to do that as a profession making money, I stopped calling myself a singer-songwriter. And then over years, I was like, that's bullshit. Because at my core, who I am, I have channel 1 to 8, just like you do, the channel of inspiration. It's like the mark of an artist, like it's in your blood, it's like in your soul. And maybe you make money doing that, maybe you don't, doesn't matter. The fact that you're doing your creative thing is meant to inspire people, enlighten people, move people, and make people want to be more creative too. So I have that. And knowing that from my human design, it was like, I gave myself permission to be like, I'm a singer songwriter, whether I make money doing it or not. I'm a singer songwriter, whether I am sharing it on Spotify or not. And I really had to like reclaim that. And the capitalism part, the money part was the whole thing that was blocking me. And it was like years of severing a part of myself because I wasn't making money doing it. So I'm curious to ask you, when people bring that excuse, right? Because I think it can be like, well, I can't do this because I don't have time and I don't think I'm going to make money. What's some of your best advice that you give people that are having that money block?
Yeah. Well, just to respond to something you were saying about the singer-songwriter, like one of my least favorite phrases is aspiring fill in the blank. Because if you do the
Uh-huh.
thing, you are the thing. So
Right.
whether or not you make money for it has no bearing on it. So if you make money being a songwriter or you don't, if you write songs, you're a
You're a
songwriter.
songwriter, right?
Sorry to break it to you. It's the truth. And I also would say, listen, like your fears are legitimate. Like I struggle with a lot of fear, but the thing that keeps me coming back for belief is that people make money doing such stupid things.
Yeah.
Like there's really and like awful things. Like why couldn't you make money doing something great and that is bringing healing to the world? And it also doesn't have to be in the way you think it is. Like for Dana and I, if like we were really like, okay, this year we're going to make money from our music. There are so many different ways we could monetize music that are outside of the realm of like the traditional. We could start writing songs for weddings. We could start like a children's YouTube show, which is a gold mine, by the way. We should do that. We could like write, personalized music. We can start like gigging out. Like there's so many different ways than just like releasing a song on Spotify and hoping it gets 100 million spins. But I think you don't just have to be creative about, what you do. So like for us, writing music, you also have to be creative with the way you approach it, especially if you don't want to do it like within the traditional methods. Like I think the music industry right now is kind of kooky. So like if I was making that my one and only thing, I would approach it in a different, more creative way because I don't really want to be integrated in a system that isn't treating artists well as it is anyway. So I would say if you're having a block with that, it's very legit. Like it's also okay if like you're doing something else to make money while you're pursuing this. And I would really encourage you to look at even the way you approach it more creatively. Like, is there any other way I can make money? And again, people make money doing wild things. Like I literally, she's my favorite follow. I follow a woman named Bubble Lady Linda, and she literally blows bubbles for a living. That's her job. She
Wow.
does bubbles at like huge bubbles at parties and like has bubble machines and she has a little bubble cart. Like if Bubble Lady Linda can do it, you can do it.
Yes. Oh, I love you, Bubble Lady Linda. That
I've
is
asked her to be on my
amazing.
podcast 3 times and she's turned me down every time, but I'm going to try a fourth.
Are you
Oh,
serious?
I'm so
Wow.
serious. I'm so
oh my,
serious.
she's too busy. She's too
She's too
busy
busy.
blowing bubbles.
Many bubbles.
Um, wow. I love everything that you're sharing and saying. And I think that a lot of people there like I think something at least that helps me is realizing like there's so many fucking people on the planet. Like there are so many people that we can't even comprehend how many people there are. And it like literally doesn't register. And we just, what we see around us, we think the world is, and we think that's what the options are. And that's where we have to operate within. So like what you're saying about, the music industry, it's like that's how it is. And that's what we have to operate within. But this offering of creatively going about putting your offering out in the world or your creativity out into the world, I think is really helpful because once we realize like there's so many people, there's so many customers, there's so many different people that you can, change their life, clients or whoever. And so for me, that really helped me just break out of that limiting belief that, okay, how this isn't going to make money or this isn't going to work in this industry, to really say like, okay, anything's possible. Once again, possibilities, perspective. Um, and one of my favorite phrases is like, aliens could literally swoop in tomorrow and then none of this shit will matter anyways.
Yes.
Like the problems that we have, around anything would not even matter if an alien race came in and like totally changed the game like publicly. Like, and so it really helps me just to
Not
get off my
privately
high
this
horse
time.
of like, yeah, not privately but like publicly. It helps me get off the high horse of like everything being so fucking dense and important and heavy and hard. And like we suppress ourselves so much with how serious we make
Yeah.
everything. And what I really hear you saying, like going back to that inner child, is releasing some of that seriousness, bringing in that imagination, that creativity, letting that flow out and surprise yourself with it. versus trying to confine yourself and constrict yourself in the ways that we've really been taught are needed to survive.
100%. I'm also obsessed with the fact that you said that because when they did those big Congress hearings, I literally made a video saying, aliens are real. You might as well go for it. Anything is possible. Aliens are real. It's a
We knew that was
bipartisan
gonna
issue.
we knew that was gonna land with an Aquarius on the
Oh, I'm obsessed. I was so excited when I found out aliens were real. I'm like, there could be people or like beings on another planet that like have hopes and wants and dreams and could even care about me and are like intrigued to meet us. That's so cool.
Yes.
Or they could kill us and it wouldn't matter anyway.
I know. I'm like excited either way.
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
what's gonna happen? I don't know.
Possibilities, baby. Oh, I also wanted to say one other thing. I had this like are you all on Threads on like the new like Instagram's version of
No,
Twitter?
hardly.
Okay, it's kind of a
Meaning,
cool
like,
place and I think it's like
not
a
at
good
all.
place for entrepreneurs and creatives to be because it's easy to build up there now if you're interested in like sharing your thoughts. Also a little bit more positive than other kinds of social media because there's not as many people. Um but I put out this thread that went like semi-viral about thinking like a rich person. And it was based on this woman I was creatively coaching years ago. And I was talking to her about her project. And I was like, okay, it's probably going to cost about this much money. And she's like, great. Now we just have to figure out who's going to pay for it. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, check your Chase bank account. Like, you'll find out who will pay for it. It'll be you. You've got more than enough to cover that. And what I realized in that moment is like, rich people don't pay for things, they get funding. And so, if you are an artist of any sort, a creator, a business owner, something that is always available to us are grants. You might be able to find an angel investor, crowdfunding. So like not leaving out those, like not thinking automatically like I have to fund everything by myself and do everything by myself. There are options, and the reason why rich people keep getting richer is because they are using those options. And yes, they may have more accessibility, but that is also an option for us. And I bet you could find some way in where you have some sort of funding going on. So just something I wanted to put out there for anyone who's like scared of the money topic, think like a rich person.
I am
Mm,
obsessed with
love
that. And
it.
I think about it all the time because I think about like, from my perspective, like your soul chose everything in your life to be your curriculum. So your soul chose your parents and their financial status and the social group that you grew up in and the country that you grew up, like all of the human 3D things about your life that we often let define us. It's like your soul chose this for a reason because you're here to experience it, but it never ever defines you. So I'm always kind of like looking at and observing like what would it be like if I grew up in this like super wealthy household and I just had any options available to me, and what has my life been like because I experienced maybe something somewhat opposite from that. And I've always been looking at like the people that did grow up with really rich parents, how it's like it's easy to be jaded and to be like, well, they think that way because they grew up rich. But it's like, yeah, but the way that they think now opens so many opportunities for them because they grew up with that mindset. So like you can really get stuck in the bitter or jealous or jaded, like, well, it must be nice to be a rich person so I can think that way. But if you can get past that and see like the fact that you think that way is what opens possibilities for you. It's what opens that belief in yourself that anything is possible, that you can go for it. And it really is kind of like the mindset. And maybe you weren't raised in a household where that mindset was your norm, but you can change your perspective. And that opens up so much belief for you. So I'm really grateful that you said that. And I think it's so true that people like let money stop them. Number one, like someone has an amazing idea. They're like, I don't have any money. It's dead. And that is such a stunter of creativity. But if you can see that there's always possibilities, both of you, there's always possibilities if you can just get out of that perspective. And where there's a will there's a way. It's honestly, it's so true. And you've met people, all of us have met someone who's created more with less resources than we have. And like sometimes looking at those telling those stories, interviewing people around that, I think can be really expansive.
Yeah, for sure. It's so true. And it's not like it's easy, but it's also not easy going broke funding your project by yourself. So it's like
Right.
choosing what kind of hard you want to engage with and like trying a different way. You never know, it could work.
Yeah. I'm obsessed. I love a projector party because it feels
we
like
dive in. It feels like such
I was
a
gonna say it feels like 3 mosquitoes around like a
poking into every aspect of life.
sleeping human.
Oh, we're
Just
gonna
having a
get them.
feast. Yeah.
We're gonna understand everything
We're
and
gonna
go
bite
down
this
it.
bitch up.
Yeah, we're at the Ojai Valley Inn, baby.
Yeah, we
Right around the
are.
pool.
That's where
Oh
us
my
mosquitoes
gosh.
hang is the best.
Yeah, we deserve it.
We deserve it. We do.
Yes.
Um, yeah. I'm like, what
Yes.
else do we want to dive into?
Well, I'm curious to ask you, Lauren. I mean, you have so many things going on in your life, and I know you have a lot of creative projects in the mix, but I'm curious to ask you in your own personal journey, like besides guiding other people, what are the things that you're feeling the most passionate about right now? Or maybe those are the creative projects where you're guiding other people, but I'd love to just kind of hear in your personal journey right now, sort of like what's next for you? What are you the most excited about? What are you working on? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I really feel most excited about doing my keynote speaking because I feel like it's the culmination of everything I've been doing. I'm going to be singing in my keynote speaking too. And
Cool.
I eventually want to get to a point maybe where I do like interviewing, so bringing the podcasting aspect into it and even doing some like live coaching with the audience. So that really is where I see my life going toward that and then teaching these workshops and coaching creatively. I'm doing a Kickstart Your Creativity coaching workshop in the new year. So it will be an hour of teaching and then an hour of live coaching. And I love doing that. Like, there's nothing better to me than when somebody claims their creativity and then puts it out into the world. And when I get to see that, I feel like I've like raised a child. It feels like, wow, like I can't believe my little one's like off, like sharing their light and their love. So those are really the things I feel most passionate about. I'm also releasing 2 new songs in the new year. So doing that, there, like one of the shows I produced, somebody came on and said, what would you have to do so that if you were to die tomorrow, it would be dignified? And the first thing that came to me was, I would be so sad if I did not get to experience my music being out in the world while I'm in this body. Because I know my fiance and my mom and dad would like find a way to put it out and I would enjoy it from wherever I was. But I would be so sad if I didn't get to experience it in this body. So I put out my newest single, Genie in a Bottle, which is a cover of Christina Aguilera's classic. And then in the new year, I'm putting out 2 songs. One of them is about healing codependency and my journey with that. And the other one is about embracing the personal shadow. So I love it too, because like I'm getting into some pretty like deep, dark topics, and it's definitely the most vulnerable music I've put out. But yeah, I'm just like looking forward to being myself and hopefully helping other people become themselves.
I love
Yeah.
it. And I think it's so cool for any projectors listening, but also for anyone who wants to understand projectors. You having all of these different projects that you do and all these different talents, and what you're saying of like you're excited about this one avenue where they all can come together and it's like the totality of you. I really resonate with that in myself as well. And like even being a singer-songwriter, right now, the way that I share music the most is in our personal retreats where we're there in person and I'm singing and we're using music and things like that. And I think to myself, like, this feels so good because it's the totality of who I am coming all together. And I do have so many different, as a projector in traditional human design, one of the big things that people will say is that you need to find your niche, like your one area that you're going to specialize in. And with a manifesting generator, you're going to have many different talents and passions. So like you were saying when you first came into discovering your type, it's like, wait a minute, I have a lot of different talents and passions. I don't want to be pigeonholed into being a projector that needs one niche. And I resonate with that. And even to this day, I do have a certain niche with human design, but that's not only who I am. I have all of these things that I embrace, and they might have different avenues or venues, but I think it's really expansive for all the projectors listening to know that you're not limited. You don't need to get rid of things because you find out you're a projector. Like there is a way where everything that you're talented in, everything that you're passionate about can come together and be shared in the world, and it can guide people as a projector. And you don't need to like subscribe to the traditional human design thing that like you have to narrow things down and find that niche. And I think that what you're doing and the path that you're walking is such a beautiful example of that. And it really helps me reflect on myself like, oh, yeah, me too. Like the fact that I allow myself to do all of the things that I do and to not be like, oh, I'm a projector with a niche, so I have to get rid of these other things. I think it's really expansive. But also, I want to say on the other side of that, I love how everything you do is still projectoring, like how you were saying, like you're writing these songs, singer-songwriter, but it's still like you're going into these really deep topics that is your wisdom and your insight. And by someone listening to it, they're guided through that experience. Like that's the difference between a projector writing a song and maybe a generator, let's say, writing a song is like you still have your projector essence that everything you do or create is still guiding people in some way because your soul came here with that sacred role of being a guide.
I love that so much. And I feel like all the things I do together are my niche. Like once I
Totally.
found that term multi-passionate creative, I was like, that's the niche.
That's the niche. Totally.
And then I'm teaching from that perspective because I've gone through all of those things and I know I've been in the arena. And I think of it the
Right.
same for both of you. It's like you do so many different things within your business and in your lives. And I think it's important because it's an example to us that like it doesn't have to be one thing. It's many
Yeah.
things. Like we're all
Right.
many things. And to like be like, I am only this thing. That's why I didn't like it when I first heard it. I was like, how dare you tell me I'm one thing? I'm not one thing. I'm many
Totally.
things, you know?
Yes.
And so then to like realize, oh, it can actually be this expansive thing. Like these many things can actually be the one thing was
Yeah.
super empowering.
Yeah. And something that you said along the way, talking about creativity, I think it's when you were talking about money and creativity, that it can always look different than you thought it would originally. I think that that is such a huge thing to hold on to as we create our lives. Like the blueprint might be there, but the physicality of how it shows up might surprise you. And can you let go of like that control or those limitations and allow yourself to be delightfully surprised in how it actually all came together and to know that I think in life, there's so much of life that is co creation, even though we are creating. There's also the other forces that are coming together and opportunities that surprise you and mentors that come in and like you never expected or planned these other things. But once they're there, what you're creating can really surprise you and it can have this greater life and greater impact than you ever even saw or, saw in your mind's eye. So I think it's really beautiful too. I think part of the conversation that we've had, there's been this through line of expansion and in so many ways like allow your creativity to be expansive that possibilities perspective like there's so many other possibilities than maybe the only one that you thought of or your human design journey there's so many possibilities of how it could end versus maybe what you originally thought and being open to that those perspectives shifting and new possibilities coming in and not just being singular in the way that we see our lives and the way that we see our journeys and the way that we see the things that we're creating. I think that expansion is something that people really struggle with. I think a lot of us, we want to single in on one thing and make it simple. And through this conversation, I feel like a lot of the things that have been shared sort of open it up. And it feels good to exist in that expansion. I think a lot of people, that's what they're missing in their lives. So I feel really grateful for the way that that message has come through in a frequency and a lot of the things that have been shared.
Yeah, same. I'm like thinking of specific people in my life that I'm like, I need to send them this episode.
Totally. Same.
Because it'll be so helpful for them.
Expanding.
But like waiting for the invitation before I do that. So not really
see,
repelling.
that's that. Now I'm getting better at that after your course. That's the hardest thing is like in my family growing up, my parents always wanted my advice. Like I was like their unofficial counselor. And so I really learned like giving love is giving unsolicited advice, like giving my feedback, sharing my feedback. So that has been the hardest one because like I literally will go as far as to like listen as to a podcast as another person. I'm like, oh, I see it through like I hear it through their ears.
100%.
Is that a projector thing?
Yes.
Like I'll read something as someone else or hear a song as someone else.
Yeah. I'm like
Wow.
everything that you guys were just sharing, I was listening to it with the ears of someone else. And I was like, they're gonna need this.
But yeah, it's interesting, like growing up in an environment where you were always invited is really what it was. And so it's like, I don't even know what it feels like to not be invited to share my insight, to share my wisdom. So then going out into the world away from your family of origin and then having like a whole new, which is a really interesting thing. Cause I would say, like, in my family of origin, I was only invited to share my insight maybe 25% of the time. And 75%, it was like, literally, shut up. Nobody asked you. You're so annoying. Scrunch you down. So it's interesting to see the difference. Like, our conditioning and the role that we play plays such a huge part in our journey. But I actually love that. Like, I think it's really cool. Like, you came to Waiting for the Invitation from a different angle than I did. So both have their challenges, right? Obviously, like learning to wait for the invitation. But I'm curious to ask you, I mean, I know we're kind of wrapping up here, but with Waiting for the Invitation more, have you seen it make a difference in your energy levels?
Yeah, I think definitely, like, the thing that resonates the most out of everything we've talked about and like what I learned from your course is I was just like pouring my energy into the world. And I think I have gotten, like, I'm still not there yet at all, but through experimenting over these last few months, I've definitely gotten a lot of my energy back. And like, I look at it like, why would I give someone like the privilege of my insight and my energy if they don't want it? Like, so sorry, it's literally your loss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
100%.
if you don't want it, like, there have been a couple times when I felt bad about it in the past few months, obviously over the course of my life. But for the most part, like, if you don't want it, that's totally fine. I need it for myself. Like, I've been saying for a really long time, like, I need a me. Like, I need someone like me out in the world. I'm like, what if I could be my me for free?
That's
Yeah.
powerful. I know. I think that all the time when I'm giving a friend advice because it seemed like I was invited, but halfway through I see their eyes glaze over and I'm like, I get paid a lot of money per hour to do this. So instead, I'll just shut the fuck up and let you do your own thing. And I'll save my energy and I'll save my, all of those things. And it really is going back to the beginning of this conversation, when you first hear Waiting for the Invitation, it can seem disempowering, but actually through the experimentation, you realize it's the ultimate empowerment. I'm not going to waste my energy. I'm not going to waste my insight. I'm going to save that precious resource because our energy is a precious resource as a projector. And I'm going to only utilize it where it's aligned, where that success is going to come from. So it's really cool to hear that you've sort of like been able to see, and we're not perfect. I mean, that art, like you were saying, the foundational level of your strategy and authority, it's a lifelong art form. And we talk about that a lot. It is the most important thing. It is the first thing that you learn, but it's not going to be the thing that you nail first try. It depends on how much you're willing to experiment with it and how much you're willing to trust it. And even with your splenic authority, like, jumping off the cliff, even when it makes no sense mentally, but some voice inside of you tells you to do it. That's the gold. That's like where you really start to prove to yourself that this shit works, but it's so scary to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you were talking too, I was thinking, like, I think part of why I rejected it so much in the beginning, I was like, well, that's not who I am. But what I've come to realize, like, for me at least, I think the reason that my soul was given this like projectorness is because it maybe isn't like the way I feel naturally inclined to be, but it's what I most need to learn. Like, I didn't really
Yes.
need to learn how to work hard. I just like had I don't know if it's because like I'm second generation Italian. Like, I had an intuitive knowing in me of like how to hustle. Like, I got the workhorse award on swim team in fifth grade. Like, that was
Oh
like
my gosh.
a part of my DNA. But like, but I actually really need to learn how to rest and just be and trust that who I am is enough.
Yeah.
And so I wondered, like, if that could be part of it too.
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
curriculum that your soul came here to learn. And everything in our design has a highest expression and a lowest expression. It's a journey. Like, for example, all of the gates in your spleen, it's an intuition and a gift that you have, but first you have to transcend the fear to get there. So it's like you could literally look at your human design blueprint as your soul's curriculum. And we agree with being projectors. Like, if I had all the energy in the world, like, the world better watch out because I would build some shit, but I don't. That's not my lesson. That's not what I'm here to experience and explore and learn this lifetime. It's the opposite. It's how do I create all the success I'm meant to and share all of the wisdom I'm meant to while having a limited amount of energy. That's the what we're studying. That's the book that we're
Yeah.
studying in this lifetime.
And I think that a lot of times with waiting for the invitation, projectors get it gets confusing with recognition because, like you're saying, when you're on swim team as a child, you were recognized as being a workhorse, and that recognition felt good. And so then it's like, okay, I am a workhorse. Like I felt good, recognized at that. And then so you keep doing it and you keep getting recognized at it. And really, it's showing you as a projector that recognition feels really good. But then you come to a point in your life where you're like, wait a second, I'm being recognized for something that I'm not actually enjoying because I'm so fucking exhausted, I might die. And there's got to be a better way. And then you have to figure out a different way. And then you go through the whole crisis of, well, then who am I? If I'm not a workhorse, then what am I? And who are people going to recognize me? Are they going to recognize me as lazy or as a quitter or as something else? And it's like, you have to kind of go through this identity crisis as a projector to figuring out who you actually are when you realize that the recognized version of you isn't going to sustain you long term, because you were kind of faking it till you make it eventually. And like, yeah, there are things that you are here to be a workhorse on, but they have to be things that are you're fascinated in and you're lit up by and actually are you, versus like I always like to say being recognized for your insight versus being recognized for what you can do physically or the work that you are getting done. So it's shifts that take place over time, and it is like identity crisis vibes for projectors.
Totally. My whole world just fell apart.
Yeah. It's
Identity
like
crisis vibes. That's what it felt like.
Internally, I don't know anything. Yeah, it's a whole journey, but being a projector is intense because the world is not made for projectors.
We don't live in a
and
projector world.
We are slowly creating a projector world, one individual at a time, and that individual is going out and, you know, creating change, and it'll slowly happen where now the world is going to be supporting individual needs versus like blanket statements of everyone must work this way or do this thing or be valued by this thing. It's going to get there. Maybe not in our lifetime. Maybe it will. I don't know. Possibilities. Aliens. You never know.
Yeah, the aliens will be here. And then I do believe that like 9 to 5, or at least the 5-day work week, is going to go away because the data they're showing is it's just not productive, actually.
Right.
We just need all the crusty fucks to like die.
The aliens will come take them for us so we can fast forward
the crusty ones who are holding on to these structures that even though there's data that's like this does not serve,
not supportive
anyone, they're just a little too crusty to let it go.
There's new technology that can support this journey instead of humans doing it.
Right. Yeah. It's really
dark,
sad when people like went through something bad and then they want other people to go through it too. I mean, I know that's like trauma 101, but like for me, anytime I've been through any kind of trauma or hardship, I work so hard to make sure I never pass that to somebody else. And if somebody else has it better than I did, like I can like mourn for my younger self that I didn't get it, but I'm never like, they should have a bad life too. And I feel like that's what the energy is. It's like, I had to come into the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, and so will you.
So do you. But what you just said, Lauren, is such old soul energy. I can't even tell you. Like for you to have that perspective of like, I don't want to hand this down. I want to change it and I can heal myself and mourn that I didn't get it, but I don't want to pass it on. Like that is old soul energy AF. And I've been thinking about this a lot, like being the generational cycle breaker. It's like someone punched you in the face and then you want to punch someone in the face, but instead you don't pass it forward. You just take the punch. And that's hard to do.
You take the punch and you ice your face. And you actually heal it.
But that's hard. And that's like really, that's a form of love that I think we're all striving for and we're moving towards. But the fact that there's something inside of you that's always been like, yeah, duh, it just shows like kind of how special you are. And I think all of us projectors, everyone being born in this time, from our perspective, this is a very, very, very important time to be born. And the fact that you came here in this time frame is significant. It's like the time of the cycle breakers. Like cycle breakers unite. We all came here. We all incarnated at the same time. And we're like rolling up our sleeves. Let's do this. And you can see it happening all around us. You can see us changing the patterns, but it takes people who have this old soul love and connection that want to do that. So I just really wanted to highlight, like, that's so beautiful to hear you say that. I really admire that in you. And I think that that's the energy that's going to change the world.
And I want to just add that the reason why it's so hard to be a cycle breaker is because at the root of it is this sense of belonging, like feeling like you want to belong, right? That we're all the same. And that gives us the sense of we belong, right? If you think of like initiations or hazing or, a rite of passage, it's this sense of belonging. Like I went through this. And so now you're going to go through this. And now we're the same. And we've both been through the same hard shit. And so we can relate. We belong. We made it to the other side. So we have value here. And so that sense of tribalism or needing to belong in a community in such a it's like rooted into our physical bodies. And we've been in this era of valuing that. It takes so much to be a cycle breaker because you have to be willing to be outcast. You have to be willing to not belong or to not be valued by your boss or looked up to by people that have this mentality of passing along trauma, but they don't even see it as trauma. They see it as a rite of passage. Like this is what happens. And so I sucked it up. So you have to suck it up and then I'll value you. Then I'll respect you. Because they only find their own respect in that same way. So it's really interesting how like this new paradigm is really about shifting that sense of belonging to belonging to yourself and not needing to look towards outside things to find that validation. And what that really is going to look like. And cycle breaking is one facet of many that are going to be changing, but it's just so fascinating to me. And you just said it so easily, like, of course.
Yeah, like,
when you say it that way, it's like, nobody would say like, oh, I got punched in the face, so I'm going to punch you in the face, unless you're like joining Fight Club, right? Like,
right. Well, especially when it's not even the person that punched you in the face that you're punching.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what?
No, like literally that's like hazing.
Doesn't even make sense.
It's like joining a fight club where it's like, okay, we all beat you up and now you're in. And then you're going to beat up the next guy
for them to come in.
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
No, the belonging piece is so strong because even like if you ever do like generational healing and like familial healing, there can be a grief in like being the first one to step out of line. And I've literally pictured it before because like I don't have like the punching in the face. Thankfully, I'm very, blessed. I had like a loving upbringing, but there's a lot of fear, a long line of fear I've been attached to. And I remember being in a therapy session and my therapist was like, how does it feel to step out of line? Like, can you see that you can still be connected to your family and disengage from this fear pattern? And so, yeah, it's a beautiful big point that you bring up that it is like, even when it's not a super intense situation, it's like something like a fear, there is a stepping away that's really difficult to metabolize.
Or what I'm going to be sitting with after this conversation and learning from you, Lauren, is like, for me with my mother's line, these were women who did not create what their soul wanted to create because they were raising kids. That's all they did. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't create something. They didn't leave something that they were proud of because they were busy supporting the men in their life and raising kids. And so for me, I feel like a generational cycle breaker in that lineage, in that I am stepping out and creating something because it's coming from me, because I want to. And it's not just making babies, it's also like creating something in the world. And so I even feel sometimes like that isolation of like, I'm the first one to step out of line in that realm of creativity, not just in the realm of trauma or whatever it is. And I'm going to be thinking a lot after this about creativity being this sacred essence and it unlocking something in your life that really helps you be alive. So I really want to thank you for everything that you've shared today. And in general, this has felt so fun to have this conversation with you because you get it. You're so wise. You're so insightful. I love your projector wisdom. It's been such an honor to have this conversation. I'm really grateful for everyone listening. And I'm sure that they're going to get really inspired and feel like, okay, what does creativity mean to me after listening to this conversation? And what are the things that maybe I'm feeling stirring within me? And I'd love to just invite you to share where people can find your offerings, where they can connect with you, where they can continue to listen to your wisdom.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love you too. You're such amazing teachers and human beings and business women. Like, I feel like you don't highlight that enough, but like
Mm.
your business prowess is truly inspiring to me and something that I want to continue studying just by watching what you do. So thank you for having me here. It's been an honor to like drop deep with you and have a real conversation heart to heart. Thank you, De Luna listeners, for listening. You can follow me at Lauren LaGrasso everywhere, across all platforms. My podcast is called Unleash Your Inner Creative, and we have conversations a lot like this every week. New episodes every Wednesday, so tune in. I offer creative coaching. If you're interested in setting up a session with me, you can go to laurenlagrasso.com or lauren.lagrasso@gmail.com. Set up a free discovery call. I'd love to support you in your creative journey. And if this airs before January 11th, I'm doing a Kickstart Your Creative Project course in the new year on January 11th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. First hour is going to be teaching. We'll do some inner child healing, visualizations, and then also practical tools like writing down your goals. And then the second hour is going to be me doing live coaching. And I'd love to support you in that way. And I just love you both. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. It's been a pleasure to dive in with you. And I'm just so excited to keep learning from your projector wisdom as we go forward into this new paradigm.
Yay, 2027. I heard it's coming.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to follow along and learn more about human design.